So I remember at the top of the year, I was standing in a supermarket with my mom, and I heard the Lord say, "Don't drink this year. Like this is a dry year for you." And so I was like, "Oh, okay." I didn't listen because we in the house. What else we doing? So 2020 was a bust. Okay. And so at the top of this year, like literally, and I don't know how other people hear God, how God speaks to other people, but but God speaks to me like he's from North Philly. So this year, in January, he's like, "So we gonna try this again." Literally, he brought it back around, and I was like, "Okay, cool." And then one of the ministers that I follow online, she at the in January taught a message on sobriety and the importance of it, and not necessarily from like an alcohol perspective, even though of course there's so many opportunities to tie in, but just being sober in your spirit, sober in your mind, and the benefits of it, just having clarity, hearing from God, being able to do the things that he's calling you to do because it's for a purpose, right? It's for a reason. And even at the top of the year, I wasn't really taking the word seriously. And you know how, like, well, I'll talk about me. I tried to barter and compromise. I was like, well, I won't do this. I'll just do this. I'll keep it on the weekends. And we try to make shift God's instruction into something that he totally didn't say, right? So I my good friend who gathers me often sent me a text message out the blue and was like, "Hey, yeah, the Lord just wanted me to remind you of what he said." Mind you, I had just had lunch with someone and had the best margarita ever. Okay. And so
Margaritas are good, by the way.
yeah,
But
it
yeah,
was a great
I
strawberry
understand.
margarita. Yeah. And
Ooh,
so after that, I said, "Okay, let me surrender and take this seriously. Like, I hear you, Lord." You know what I mean? And so from that point, I think that was back February, maybe the top of March. Um, I've been dry. You know what I mean? I haven't been drinking. And my prayer is like, I don't know why. Because a lot of times when God says what he says or he gives a command or instruction, like we don't understand why. And maybe we'll find out down the road. Maybe we won't. You know what I mean? But it's for a purpose. And we're not
hmm.
called to understand, we're called to obey. Right. So even though he will give you understanding, that's not to say don't ask God questions. And so, I've been obeying. And even what I shared with you earlier today, it's like, it's relational. Like I talked to God about it. Like he's given me grace in this space. You know what I mean? Because even before I started drinking again, because when I got saved, there was 10 years I didn't drink because I thought it was sin. Right. And so just evolving again in my relationship with the Lord and like reading scripture, it's nowhere in the Bible that says that it is sin. Like, don't be drunk. I feel like God just doesn't want us to be foolish. He wants us to be able to make solid decisions, and he wants us to listen to him when he speaks to us. So yeah, and then the other night, when we got together, you invited me out for fellowship, and you gave me like a disclaimer. You're like, "Listen, this is the environment," and it was a beautiful environment. And I came in prepared to be like, "Hey guys, so blah blah blah," and I was like, "Lord, how do I handle breaking this news? What do I do? Is it cool? Whatever, whatever." Literally checked in with the Lord, and I felt clearance. I felt the peace, and He was like, "Go ahead, it's fellowship," and I was like, "Cool." And we enjoyed ourselves. You know what I mean? And we had a great time in the Lord. And it was just like, okay, that's it. You know what I mean? And I haven't had anything. I don't plan to have anything. And I even told you, like, we're going to get together again. I hit up Beth, and she's like, "Oh, we got to do it again." Um, but I have no problem saying, "Hey guys, I'm dry," and being amongst people who can respect that and don't put the pressure on. It's beautiful. But it's just beautiful to be able to obey God and to be able to communicate with him that way.
I had not told this story. A lot of people know the story. I'm uh, God told me to, head toward the city after being in Philadelphia for over 20 years, and I discerned that to be New York City, and I didn't really exactly obey right away, and I started looking into real estate in the city because God's blessed me here in Philly to own property, and I was like, why can't I try it in New York? And I got scared. And then I was like, well, I can't afford Manhattan. That's the city. I can't afford it. And I went went over to Jersey City and was looking around. Well, that's the city, Jersey City. It's part of New York.
Mm-hmm.
And a few years later, hadn't really moved forward. And God just came back to me, obey, obey. And when I finally was like, all right, let me just see what miracle God's got up his sleeve. I went to New York. I got approved for my next house loan, and they were like, "Here's the number." And I was like, "Are you sure that's the right number?" That was kind of one thing. And then I went shopping around. I was like, I called some realtors in the city, in New York proper, and they were like, "Yeah, with that number, you can probably buy something in Manhattan, but like way up in like Washington Heights." And I went and looked, and I found this place and bought it. And then I got this apartment in Washington Heights, followed God up there. And I went in the back. When you go into real estate, you can kind of go on these websites and look back at the history. And the funny thing is that 4 years prior, when God had actually told me to go, and I dilly dallied, and sometimes they say like not doing something is the same as doing the opposite, and I dilly dallied, and 4 years before that, the apartment that I'm in was like half the price of what it is now.
Oh wow.
So there's a cost for not obeying, and there's things where you just got to just jump in, and you were saying about you might not see it immediately, but you might see it in hindsight. You might figure it out. So that for me, that was interesting because God still blessed me to do that, but at a larger cost because my obedience wasn't as quick. I feel like that kid when I get these kids, right? They're 9, 11, but when they were younger, they were like scared to get in the street, and we taught them well. We taught them don't go in the street. But then I would go jaywalk and I'd be like, all right, go now, and they would like panic.
Yeah.
And they would panic. I'm like, no, no, no. When I say go now, I mean go. Just trust.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you. I'm not going to say go now without me having a way for you.
Yeah, that's a great example.
And so I think that, again, back to that, like, let's be a child of God. And like God says, run across the street. Run across the street.